distribution, Jerry. All right, we're live. Let me just share the YouTube link and then we'll get going.
Look what we dragged off the street. Look at him.
I'm going to share it now, 2 seconds.
Dragos, welcome. Welcome, everyone.
Hey, guys, what's up?
Yeah, good to see you, sir. Spend lots of time on Spaces and in Telegram. Finally get to meet you, and we get to meet you here. Obviously, there's quite a bit happening around this new ERC code, and yeah, I mean, just give us a little bit of background around how you came about it. I think you got quite a cool story that might tie in with a couple of other people, and I quite like your story. So tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not the type that like tweets all the time about projects and about what I buy. I don't necessarily tweet on a regular basis, but whenever I find something that's like new and interesting, I tend to go heavy on it. Like I went super heavy on Frentech, and I think that was a really good bet, if not for the founder just like completely messing it up. So I stumbled, actually funny enough, in Rec Gems' Telegram group. He has like a Telegram group for people who hold this Frentech key. It's a really good group. And he messaged that when this launched, I think it was like Saturday morning my time. And I was like, okay, yeah, should ape this. I don't know, it was like $400, $500, $600. I had no idea what it was. It was really intriguing the first day. I can't remember exactly how I perceived it, but I realized it was something new. And I was like, okay, something new, potential new paradigm, potential new narrative. Usually it kind of pays off to go heavy on these. But there's actually some messages in that Telegram from someone else being like, yeah, I'm not sure exactly what this is, but it's something new. So that's usually bullish. So I bought it. It had a really thick liquidity added by the team. It had like 4 million or something liquidity. And then they started pulling liquidity and buying back tokens with that money. So they kind of like started pumping it. People were trying to ARB, because they communicated it beforehand. So people were trying to ARB that. So that's why like the price pumped all the way to like 1,300 or whatever it went. And then it was like nighttime, my time. The guys were like awake for 30 hours deploying this. So they went to sleep. Literally all the devs went to sleep. And then I wake up in the middle of the night. It's like $380 or some shit. I'm like, dude, what happened? It went down like 70%. Because the context is there was another project called Emeralds, which launched 2 days before, which got exploited. And this was similar to that. So everyone, when we were buying it, we didn't really buy with too much because we were like, okay, this is something new. What if it gets exploited? Mm. So then when you wake up in the middle of the night and you see that chart, you're like, oh shit, something must have gone wrong. So I dumped most of my initial stack. I was like, like, is what it is. I'll take a small loss. And then I wake up in the morning and I fully expected to see it go to zero, but it was like $400, $500 and it kept going up. I was like, okay, what happened? So I go into the Telegram and it turns out the devs were sleeping and people, because of like the Emerald rug, like the Emerald exploit and all that, people started panic dumping and it went down and nobody was like chatting in the Telegram. So people thought it was a rug or some shit. Even though these guys like Control has, he has like a following on Twitter. They're not like randos, who just like decided to launch like a project. And then they did like a community call on Telegram and people started buying back. And the guy, I mean, I've been forwarding you messages from the Telegram group. Like the guy is like such a good shiller. Like he knows how to shill. They seem to be really good with the dev work, but he's like S tier shiller. So I was seeing that and I was like, okay, this is definitely not a rug. I still hope it doesn't get exploited, which don't get me wrong. Like it's a novel thing. It's still a risk, but I bought more and more and more. And then I started, like trying to re-roll my NFTs so I get more red crates. We can get into that as well. Yeah, and then I decided to write a thread about it because it was like something new. It was really cool. And yeah, like 2 days later, it's kind of blown up like crazy now. Like even Sisyphus is in now. Not that
Yeah.
Sisyphus is usually late, but you know what I mean. It's like
Yeah,
very
yeah.
fast how everything happened.
Yeah. So can you give kind of people a high level of what this new token standard is, and what is so interesting and appealing to not just us here, but it's getting a lot of traction very, very quickly. So like, let's fill some people in.
So I'm not like the biggest technical expert, but I think it's quite. I was trying to explain it in a very simple way. I don't think it's that hard to understand. First of all, I was having discussions with people who were telling me like, hey, this has been done before. It's not actually that novel. You know, you have like pseudo swap. You can do like ERC20 wrappers for NFTs. But basically what these guys did is very simple. They tied together two token standards. ERC20s, so like normal tokens that we trade day in and day out, and ERC720, which is like the NFT standard that is being used now. It's a bit different, I think, from SudoSwap and like having an ERC20 wrapper, because these are essentially tied together. So whatever action you do on chain, it affects the other. So technically you could say you have two of each. So you have both the tokens and the NFTs. But for example, if you sell a token, it will automatically burn your NFT like within the transaction. If you transfer the token to another address, it will randomize the NFT. So the traits always get randomized on a transfer. If you sell the NFT on OpenSea or wherever, it will also transfer the token. So they always go together. But this is the biggest distinction. If you transfer your NFT or you sell the NFT, it does keep its traits. So let's say you have some rare NFTs from the ones that you minted. You can just transfer them out to a separate wallet and you will keep the rarities. Otherwise, everything keeps getting reshuffled. And with every transaction, and the NFT is burned, and then it's reminted. It's reminted with a higher serial number, but the rarity could still be rare, quote unquote, based on what we know so far. So basically, that's all that it is. But what it does is, if you think about it, you can think about it as like a 10,000 NFT collection that also automatically have tokens attached, which you can easily add liquidity to on Uniswap. And the price of the token on Uniswap is essentially the floor price of the NFT collection, right? So you can anytime. I'm not a big NFT trader, so I never really cared about, let's say someone shills me Pudgy Penguins, I would just go and like sweep the floor. I really don't care about rarities. So for someone like me, this would be really useful because I would just buy like penguin tokens or whatever and don't care about the rarity, right? So you can always dump on DEX at like the floor price or buy at floor price. But if you have something that's super rare that commands a premium, then you would sell or buy the NFT. That's basically what it is. The difference between this and like an ERC20 wrapper is it's like by default, you have the token and the NFT and they travel together. With an ERC20 wrapper, it's like the NFT and the token exist on one side or the other, right? Like if you want to get the tokens for, let's say Pudgy Penguins had tokens, you'd have to like lock your NFT in the wrapper, generate a token, right? And then the token, if you wanted to convert the token into an NFT, you would send the token to the wrapper and get the NFT back, right? So you would always kind of like fractionalize or like split the supply between the NFTs and the tokens. Whereas here, they both exist at the same time. And what that does, I think it makes it very easy to provide liquidity for new NFT projects. And it's not like huge revolution, but it simplifies things a lot, and I feel like it can catch on. And they've also implemented, like, they call them whitelists, but they're not really whitelists, where certain contracts, they would add them to this whitelist and it wouldn't burn or mint NFTs. So let's say, for example, you want to get listed by a centralized exchange. They give you the address. These guys like put it in the smart contract, and then whenever the tokens are sent there, it won't like generate NFTs for the exchange address. It would only generate the NFTs when they are being sent back to another wallet. So there's like all sorts of like cool customizable stuff that they've done. And yeah, I mean, this has been live for like 3 days, so I'm sure they can build, and they're planning to build other stuff on top of it. But that's like the TLDR.
Yeah, that was a great explanation as well. And I think you're exactly right in what you're saying. It's just simplified a lot of other attempts to try and get this idea to kind of work. SudoSwap definitely caught a lot of people's attention and kind of had its day in the sun. I still think it was very, very complex for a lot of people. I think fractionalization just didn't necessarily take off, didn't really work. We've seen a few, like the original Doge NFT got like fractionalized and the tokens trading off the back of it. But this just seems like a really logical next step in that evolution towards like how you kind of have this happy middle ground between the two. And I think we've seen the liquidity just continue to increase on like the current pair, which is Pandora ETH. But I think that's only going to continue to increase based on the fact that people are going to be trying to sell into the liquidity pool to try and pull out, I don't know, a higher tier of the collection. I think people are kind of preempting that. And I think the more liquidity that comes in, bigger and bigger fish are going to want to come in. And
They don't have to do that though. Well. They don't have to do that to get bigger rarities. You can just transfer the NFTs around from one wallet to the other.
So they'd be able to, I don't know, let's say you got your wallet A and your wallet B. So each time they're going to trade, they can send it back and forth, and hopefully that when
that's what I did. That's what I did like a few days ago.
Nice.
What's that?
Is there any fee taken from that?
It's quite expensive. Like it's because you mint and burn an NFT with every transaction. So if you do it with like 10 or 20 NFTs, it will cost you like $30-$40 per transaction. Maybe it's like $5 per NFT. So it can get quite expensive. But they're also implementing a solution to tackle that. Like they're implementing a solution where you can like lock the NFTs that you want to hold and like re-roll the others. But there is an interesting ARB that will happen. Because they've also been teasing a lot about the NFT collection itself, that it's not like your typical NFT collection. Apparently they've done some like pretty cool stuff. Right now we just know the rarities is like 5 different boxes with their rarities. But the ARB that will happen, I think, because right now everyone's hunting for the red boxes because they're the most rare. And basically what people can do is they're listing the reds higher than the like actual floor price, right? The ones that have reds, they sell them at a premium, let's say like 20-30%. It's kind of like, it's been like 10, 20, 30%, depends, because it's like fluctuating a lot. And then the ETH that you get, you like rebuy tokens. So that's kind of like an ARB that's happening, because some people don't care about the rarities. They're just like keep doing that ARB. So like then like money keeps flowing into the LP.
Yeah, and I think what like the immediate question I kept getting asked was, why are people buying not round numbers of like the Pandora token? It's like, why are they buying like 1.16? And I don't know if it's people just aping into something they're seeing going up and don't understand like the underlying of it. But from my understanding, if you're not buying kind of whole numbers of the specific token, you're basically just paying a premium, because if you bought 2.1 Pandora, you're only going to have 2 NFTs. If you bought 2.9 Pandora, you're only going to have 2 NFTs. If you buy 3.00, you're going to have 3 Pandora NFTs. But you see like lots of different buys coming in that are just kind of scattergun approach to it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it really makes a difference unless you care about the rarity. Because like if you buy 2.5, let's say, or 2.3, you'll still have 2 NFTs and you have 0.3 tokens that you can sell anytime at floor price. I don't know why people buy like that. I mean, you'd have to input when you buy, instead of like putting in the USDC amount or ETH amount, you'd have to put the Pandora amounts that it calculates that and like executes exactly. But you will never get like a fixed amount based on how the transaction executes. I don't think it's that big of an issue. I actually think it's like pretty bullish, because if you think about it, it takes like the maximum supply will never be 10,000 NFTs. It will be less, because there's no way everyone will just have like integer amounts.
All the dust.
Yeah. So all the dust that's accumulated will take away, I don't know, 500, 1,000. I don't know how many NFTs, depending on how the distribution happens. Because right now there's not that many in circulation, I think. There's like, I don't know. I haven't checked, but there were like 2,000 something in circulation. But I think that's like more of a thing. I look at it more as a token, That's the beauty of it, though, right? Because it bridges
Yeah.
people who buy tokens and people who buy NFTs, and they have like specific strategies that they're following for NFT people as well. But there will always be, you kind of get attention from two different parts and people looking at it in two different ways.
So
Yeah.
they had the spaces last night, Euro time zone, and they spoke about the ability to roll this thing out beyond just NFTs. And they actually made a point that we don't just want this to be another NFT project or an NFT project that links in the token capability. And I was just wondering whether there has been any thinking around how this could be implemented beyond NFTs and how that could kind of be something novel going into, using this standard, with pure trade. Is it purely an NFT thing, or can it be done otherwise, based on what they said?
I'm not sure what they were talking about specifically. I know they were like looking at some like ticketing use cases where, like, let's say you have like tickets for an event which are not differentiated, where you can either have an NFT for entry but also a token, and you can just it's like instant liquidity, right, for tickets if the tickets are not differentiated. If you don't mind, like, I don't know, you have like general access to a certain event, then there's like liquidity to like sell, right? They were looking at it. I'm not sure exactly what they have planned because they've been kind of vague about it. But they did say something interesting, which was that they haven't really revealed what the project is about. Like, everyone's, and like rightfully so, we're looking at this like new token standard and how the dynamic between the NFT and the tokens happens. But they did say that the reveal, like the actual reveal for the quote unquote artwork or whatever it ends up being, they're going to do it in stages. And they said with each stage, they also want to reveal what Pandora is actually about, because they haven't like showcased the full capabilities of the product itself. So I'm honestly not sure what they're referring to, but they're basically like heads down building, like the devs are like heads down building these functionalities so that they can showcase everything that they want to do. So, and for them, like that might sound like, oh shit, we're gonna wait for like a month or something. No, they're like, oh yeah, just give us 1 week, because they're literally like going at it nonstop. So yeah, I'm not sure exactly where they're going with it, but I don't think this is the end game.
Well, here we go. Control is here, so just for reference, we're going to bring Control up. And the context of Control. Welcome, sir.
Hey, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Perfectly.
There we go.
How are you, dude? Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm all right. I'm just juggling a million things, but promised I'd jump on for a bit. So glad to be here.
Yeah, so have you, man.
Fill us in, like, what's going on your end, and like kind of give the audience a little bit of kind of high level of
what's your involvement? What's your involvement?
Let me drop a link in the chat first and see if anybody in the community wants to join this. I'll jump into that. This is this a public link that you sent me, or is there a link I can share?
No.
There's a YouTube link. One sec.
Oh, got you.
The YouTube link, yeah.
I'll DM it to you.
Yeah, get your community in here. But you got to tell us first who you are, what you're doing. You don't have to give your identity away. That's not what we want.
It's all good. So I guess most people know me as Control. I am one of the founders of Pandora, which I think Dragos has already started talking about a little bit. I'm not sure. I just tuned in.
He's beside himself. He's beside himself, dude. I'm in a Telegram group with Dragos. He doesn't really say much, but when he does, it's meaningful. And when he did post last night, it was like I was all over it, and it was like, okay, this has got to be something serious. And yeah, definitely got him going. So yeah, go for it.
Amazing. Yeah, so I'm the founder. There are a couple more people on the founding team, but they are currently asleep. I, for obvious reasons, am not. But yeah, that's basically about me. We've been building Pandora for the past few days. Seems like you guys already know what that is. And now we're here.
Awesome. Has it kind of taken off a lot quicker than you expect?
I mean, to be honest, yes and no. Like, I've been in the space long enough. I've worked on enough projects to know that if you're not prepared for the kind of maximum pressure scenario when you're building a project in crypto, like you're not really prepared, period. So this is definitely something that, we thought could happen. It's definitely taken off much quicker in a bigger way than we expected, but it's definitely something that we also expected to take off. Like we weren't expecting quiet, slow growth. We definitely thought that, there would be attention. And then obviously like we have the network to know that, this is something that we'd be able to share with the right people. And we also, had a good enough idea of what we had on our hands to predict that there would be interest. Like immediately our suspicion was people are going to love this. So yeah, it's not out of nowhere, but I mean, regardless, like when you're seeing this kind of activity, it's still hard to keep up and to not be surprised, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's captured like a lot of people's kind of imagination of what's possible. And I know you guys will be focusing purely on Pandora, and you probably can't give too much away just like this point. But will this begin to look like more of an infrastructure play for maybe existing or soon to be projects building in the space? Maybe there's pre-existing tokens or pre-existing NFT projects. Like, how do you guys fit into that, or how do you kind of foresee yourself playing a role in that kind of infrastructure play, or is it purely just going to be you're going to be heads down building towards what you guys are going to pursue?
Oh man, that's a pretty hard-hitting question to open up with. I think that's a good thing. It's one that I wasn't really ready to, I guess, talk too much about yet when we haven't done, as much as I'd like to be able to show with it. But yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think that like if people are viewing this as a new primitive, then obviously like it kind of has to be a two-pronged approach. Um, Obviously, on one hand, there's Pandora as a project, as something that's very user-facing. But then in terms of infra, there's a lot that needs to be done, not just, for something like this to take off, but honestly, even just to facilitate like what we're doing, because there are so many, different protocols that haven't integrated with this, from the perspective of, it being a primitive and needing some adjustments, to be supported in that regard. So, I guess our approach, which is pretty typical, I guess, with like everything that I've done in the past, this is kind of how I like to view things, is like if we're not going to do it the way that we know it needs to be done, it's probably not going to be done that way. Um, so definitely, like that's part of the reason we've been hiring and expanding really aggressively is we recognize that like there's a huge need for infra. There's a huge need for infra for us and for our project. And then also there's already a need from other people who want to build on this. Um, so I guess that's kind of like really the main reason that we're not panicking, seeing what's happening with just like with price and with volume right now is like, I'm looking at this and looking at other things that I track on Dex Screener, and I'm like, this is not really even an NFT or like a shitcoin anymore. Like this is moving like it's like a crazy altcoin. And I'm not saying that's what we are, but definitely like there are things we're working on that side that I think can kind of help to justify the traction we've gained, and also like some of the value that we've seen flow into this. Because yeah, somebody needs to build it, and I guess fortunately, maybe unfortunately, because we're all exhausted, but we're tackling that too. So we're trying to make sure we don't do too much, but we're definitely doing as much as possible and trying to keep as much of that, within our team and within kind of our scope of work and making sure it gets done properly.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a question in the chat there. Is kind of a bit of a bottleneck
Yeah,
bring on
that's a good
people to,
question.
yeah.
Are we facing any problems regarding building out due to the growth? I would say actually the growth has been like a very helpful thing in that regard. Like again, fortunately we have a good network, so hiring has generally been pretty easy because we already know, who fits well into what place from past projects. So we've already kind of like run the gamut on that and reached out to people that initially we were like, yeah, like we probably don't need this, and now we're like, okay, we just bring everybody in that we know. And then also, because of the growth, there have been so many people, I guess people like Dragos, right, who, kind of pop up out of nowhere and who end up being invaluable and contributing a lot. And it's the same thing on the engineering side too. Like there have been a lot of people who have been building within the community, offering to build. It's like we have more talent in the talent pool than we can really even afford to hire from. So that's pretty amazing. There's also an announcement that we put out. I'll scroll back to it so that I can kind of refer to it a bit. But I guess the long story short is we have somebody who we've been working with who we can't really dox right now. Just because they're quite prolific, and I'm honestly surprised they're even doing this, but very excited that they are. But we effectively have a fourth co-founder that we just brought on, and that person has advised many projects I've worked on in the past, and has kind of generally just been like a mentor for a lot of things I've done. But this time, you know, because he's known about this since like the moment we started working on it. So as soon as he reached out and he was like, you know what, like I want to basically drop everything and work on this with you guys. That was like not only exciting, but for me, that was like a big moment of like reinforcement of any doubts I had, where I was like, okay, like I'm for sure not being an idiot by overcommitting to this. Like there is something here. Because this is just not a reaction I've ever received from this person. So they basically joined us as a co-founder. I threw out an announcement. I guess would sound kind of weird and yappy reading it out. But I guess the long story short, he's started a bunch of really successful companies and protocols. He's raised tens of millions of dollars. He's done hundreds of millions in revenue. And compared to us, like he knows exactly what he's doing. Like a lot of people have commended, you know, the stuff we've done, but like very bullish on that because, you know, this is kind of the guy that I turn to and I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So yeah, I mean, we've been growing alongside the community. Basically, we've been expanding as fast as possible.
So when will we know who this person is?
That's a great question. I think that probably comes down to, you know, his comfortability, because it's, you know, it's a big shift as somebody I think who, you know, is really well known in the space and who's worked on a lot of different things that are usually on a much larger scale. It's, you know, a pretty interesting thing for him to do, to jump on something that's like still very nascent, and take the bet that it's going to end up on that same scale anyways and kind of fit in, you know, there with like past repertoire. But yeah, I think it's just going to come down to like comfort and proving the staying power and like, you know, his value add first. It reminds me of when Pixelmon had like a takeover after that project was a total mess, and they were like, hey, we brought somebody on, he doesn't really want anybody to know who he is, but he's amazing. And then he really did end up, you know, turning it around. So kind of like that, but without the disaster part. We're trying to avoid that entirely and just start off there.
Without the Kevin NFT.
Yeah, without the Kevin. We're just trying to skip the Kevin part and get to the good part.
Did you see the group chat comment?
No, I didn't. Oh, Charles Hoskinson. Yeah, not Charles Hoskinson, but you know,
he's too busy tracking down aliens, isn't he?
Yeah, something like that.
Control, in terms of where you guys are at the moment, like obviously, you know, this is pretty much uncharted territory. I mean, what do you see as being like the main challenges that you and the team are kind of like identifying at this juncture? Curious to hear like what's ahead for you guys and how are you planning on solving them, if there are any.
Yeah, I mean, there's a billion. That's a good question. I think that one of the biggest things, obviously, is going to be, you know, like what are the right applications for this? And it's not because there's a shortage of any. It's quite the opposite issue. It's like crypto, I think categorically is usually pretty unimaginative. Sometimes, like they'll take something and figure out that you can do one thing with it, and then they'll do that 1,000 times. And with this, you can do a lot of things. So I think we want to make sure that, you know, if people are going to kind of pigeonhole this concept into having a certain couple of best use cases, which I think is probably a likely outcome beyond our control, we want to make sure that we focus on, you know, kind of building both our project and infra around suggesting something that is actually as meaningful and like as impactful as possible. Because you can do, just for example, like you can make a pretty interesting PFP collection with this if you went about it a certain way. But if we did that I feel like the first thing that would happen is we'd probably see 4 other collections try to kind of mimic and iterate on that. And then what we've done there is like we've taken a concept that we've identified a bunch of really cool things you can do, some of which were entirely impossible prior. And what we've basically expressed to the public is like, hey, you can make PFP collections with this. And at that point, it's kind of just like a waste of its potential. So that's been more challenging than it might sound. Is like, how do we make sure that we're doing the thing that not only makes this as big of a deal as possible, but also in terms of like everybody from the community to like even ourselves, obviously, it's like, what is the best value capture here? And then adding on to that, like that's been another challenge is, building out on the forward facing side, right? Like Pandora as a project people can enjoy as a user. And then building out on the tech and infra side of like this is a new primitive. It's like, how do we align value capture there? Like, how do we make people feel like everything we're building is kind of being consolidated into one place, that people aren't saying, hey, why are you doing this? Focus on that. And then, if we focus entirely on Pandora, we're going to feel like we are not doing something that has a ton of potential, which is obviously expanding on this as a primitive from an infra perspective. So I think we have the solutions, but that doesn't mean they're not challenges until we actually execute on those. But we feel pretty confident.
Cool.
My mind's racing of like what it could potentially look like for in-game assets and in-game items and things like that. I know it's very, very early days, but I'm just trying to kind of play out in my head.
I really, really like personally the heuristic of like, at least for Web3 gaming, look at something like Parallel, or look at like a CCG or a TCG. Like something like this can be very interesting for example, like pulling cards out of a pool, right? Building a deck. You've got a predetermined range of like, let's say you've got 200 different cards, each of a varying rarity, and you can pull or you can send them back to the pool. I mean, that's exactly how a drawing mechanic works in a game, right? So that's like a really interesting example of how it can work for gaming. But I do agree with where you're going with it. I think gaming is like a massively obvious like area where this can be applied. And I think that what that comes down to really is like any NFT that sees like a very high volume that changes hands very often because it's interactive, right? Like that's really where I think like being liquid and also some of the features that you can implement with this become really important, especially because when you have this semi-fungible thing where you can kind of have like a base sort of underlying value for like for a category, like a class of assets, and then you can also pull individual non-fungible representations like of that class of assets. Like that makes perfect sense in terms of being in alignment with how a lot of games work, in terms of like, yeah, you might be pulling a weapon, but like it's going to roll random stats, or it's going to be X rarity, or as I said, like a card game, or like a gacha game is another favorite example of mine. I think that's a really great way to think about it. And I think that if you want a little bit of alpha to be kind of value add for the stream, I think that I guess I really don't need to say more than like, if we're thinking about this, why would we, like, if we see this as an exciting application, why would we not tap into that ourselves? And
exactly.
Like, yeah, we are. So there you go.
All right. Any further questions from you boys?
I'm just making sounds. Interesting.
So what does the roadmap look like for you guys? Kind of like, let's look short term. I mean, it seems like you've been in a bit of a tornado, so we'll give you the luxury of a short term roadmap. Where would you guys?
Short-term roadmap is like the next 12 hours, just so you know. For them,
Yeah,
mid-term roadmap is like until the end of the week.
Something
so
like
maybe
that. Yeah.
Just give me a roadmap, regardless of what that might look like. What do you know
Sure.
at the moment, and what can you tell us?
Got you. So, I mean, as Dragos said, it's really not inaccurate. We're really going day by day here. So right now it's morning for normal people, which means that like most of the dev team will be up soon. And so the goals there are pretty simple. Today we are shipping out a couple of things on the web front, which are kind of, I think, going to be pretty telling of some of the stuff we're going to be doing with the collection. One of those is, for lack of a better term, an inventory system. So that combines a lot of the things that people have been, kind of already trying to emulate, just with like sending things back and forth from different wallets, or like, building third-party tools. Like we saw somebody in the community build a pretty interesting one for like looking at the box seeds, into a UI. That also, I think, maybe it gives a little bit of foreshadowing to what the rest of this project in the near term might look like. So that's going to allow people to have a little bit of a more tailored experience when like interacting with their NFTs, doing things like re-rolling them, sending them back to the pool, etc. So kind of gives us like a more practical, the word I'm looking for, I guess, interface to show people what this stuff can do when protocols actually integrate. Because right now it's like, you're dealing with a lot of broken shit where you go on Etherscan, doesn't really understand how to read a 404 contract. Same thing with MetaMask, same thing with OpenSea. I mean, that's why we called it ERC404. Like we kind of knew that we were building this like Frankenstein that things would struggle to make sense of. So yeah, there's that. I think that's going to be a really big thing. There's the docs, which have kind of become a meme at this point because one, I mean, people notoriously procrastinate writing documentation. Most people hate it. I actually love it, but I've been all over the place, and every time some massive thing pops up, we're like, okay, let's do this and do docs after, and that's kind of just a running joke now. It's like, hey, I'm gonna go have lunch and we'll do docs after, like, whatever, right? So there's that for sure. As I said, we've we've brought on that fourth person. We've also brought on a bunch of new staff, and we just posted that we're hiring officially. So there's going to be a lot of really boring stuff we're going to have to do, unfortunately, but very necessary. Talking to people, figuring out comp, onboarding, getting familiar. If we just take the time to do that now, and kind of deal with the fact that we can't do the more exciting stuff while we're doing that, it's going to let us ship way quicker throughout like the rest of the week, right? So I think that's obviously plus EV. On top of that, rebrand is definitely something that is in the works, but I wouldn't use the term rebrand as like, oh, it's going to be something completely different. More so just, going through the things that in the first place we're like, this is placeholder, we're going to make it nicer later. Little things, whether that's like assets for the Discord we just launched, like our logo, kind of our visual identity. That's something that we were like, okay, we're going to touch on this later, and then we started blowing up. So that's a good example of how blowing up has been challenging. But it's something we want to get to for sure. But yeah, I mean, I could really go on and on. Like I have a call at 9 after this, talking to some guys who are at Animoca. Actually, I have a call at 10, talking to some guys on the security side, talking to Code Arena about our security audit, stuff like that. So yeah, it's there's a lot. As you said, 24 hours at a time is kind of the norm at this point.
So you don't obviously have the luxury of having conceptualized an idea and then gone out and raised the money and put it together from branding to the rest of it. You've kind of like doing everything the other way around. That's what I'm understanding right now. You've kind of like almost fast-tracked your success, and now you have to go back and sort out all the details of this. That's what it sounds like anyways.
I mean, the lucky part is that we had the luxury of having the idea, which is honestly, if we didn't have that, we'd be screwed. Because I mean, like the team has worked together on a few different projects, and like so at this point, we kind of view ourselves less as like, hey, we're the team on this, and more as like we've kind of just been like a consistent like entity of like collaborators. So because of that, luckily we've had a lot of stuff on the back burner for like a couple of years at this point. So when this came about, a lot of people are like, how the hell did you throw us together this quickly? Long story short, we, our most common kind of, I guess, back burner idea is shit that we think of and we're like, this isn't really possible. Obviously, right? If it's not feasible, you don't do it. But this made that possible. So the idea is there, the blueprint's there, but in terms of the assets and whatnot, and actually getting that together, again, fortunately, like we have the workflow established so we can be quick. But yeah, we are definitely like racing against the clock in terms of like, okay, like stuff that we thought that we could kind of build out slowly, we are now rushing to do. Like, for example, we had me working on a lot of like UI stuff. Now it's like we have 2 people dedicated to that, like literally just working, offered them a full-time salary yesterday. Like, and again, like we have, the luxury, like we're super fortunate that we've worked with them enough that like getting them on board is like a 2-hour process where it's like, okay, done, like let's go. The trust is there, the communication style is already aligned. Usually hiring takes a long time, and getting people comfortable and like, all aligned takes a million years. But yeah, we have, as you said, kind of just been fast tracking everything. Luckily we're kind of used to that because, again, crypto. So
you must be in quite a strange position because you guys spearheading this new primitive. You best believe there's going to be 1,000,001 ERC404s that come to market. Like,
yeah, I think there's already like 5 that are almost done.
Yeah.
Sorry, repeat what was the last part? Was there a question?
So how do you think about that? Obviously, is it a rising tide lifts all ships? Like, the competition's good.
It's exactly that. I mean, like that's why, like when we built this, if we had built it just to be something that we shipped, first of all, like it would have been faster, it would have been easier. Second of all, the docs would have been done. But because like we immediately from the jump were like, this is a new token standard. But the difference between a novel project and a new token standard is, is this something that's actually developed to be a standard and not someone's like a spaghetti code, right? So, we made sure all of that was fully commented, was like very, very clean code. We threw up a repo, like, with explanation, with documentation for devs. And like our immediate thought was really not even like a rising tide lifts all ships, it would be good, but more so like this is necessary. Like we are, we are set if this gains traction, and we're doomed if it doesn't. So we built it for other people to use, and we've, reached out to people who we thought would make cool stuff with it. We've like shoved it down certain people's throats. And now there are people building with it, like the card game idea that I was talking about, the kind of CCG example. That's not my idea. That's something that somebody was like, hey, this should be done tomorrow, can we ask you guys for some help on this and this? And we were like, what the fuck, how's this gonna be done tomorrow? And then yeah, there was like there's CFW, who's a great artist. He's done a lot of cool stuff in the art side of NFTs. He's also making an ERC404 project. He has a full concept, which is awesome. I think one thing we're realizing, which I'm super excited about, is that a lot of people are building really quickly, not to grift, which is the usual case, honestly. I mean, that's still going to happen. There's definitely going to be some 404 rugs like in the coming weeks, so careful. But mostly because, just like for us, like there are ideas that they've had where they're like, wait, fuck, I don't know how you would even do that. And now they see a reasonable path forward. Right, especially on the generative side. So yeah, I mean, I think we're gonna see a lot of cool stuff, and I think it'll come pretty quick because a lot of people already kind of have the pieces put together.
There we go, gents. I know we took up a lot more time than everyone else.
I just want to. I want to add one thing that.
Go for it.
Go for it. And
I was gonna. What is the Blur connection?
The Blur connection, I mean, honestly, I've seen people talk about that like there's some crazy Blur connection. To be honest, the Blur connection is really nothing other than we're trying to make sure that Blur is something that plays nicely with ERC404. Beyond that, there's nothing I can really say here live. What I'll say is like, it's an interesting project. Like, people might want to do something more with it. So we're exploring all kinds of different connections, but until anything's certain, I don't want to throw anybody else's anybody's name into the hat and be like, oh, these guys can do this, these guys can do that. But there are a lot of protocols, there are a lot of teams, a lot of other people who obviously see what we're doing. I think that was true 24 hours ago, but after the past few hours, I think that's like that's beyond clear. Because to be honest, I don't really know what the fuck happened the last couple
China
1 hour candles. China apparently, but I mean, even China was like kind of like an inside joke, like the docs, where we have a founder who speaks Mandarin. He's half Chinese, and early on we had a couple Chinese people, and I was like, oh hey, talk to this guy, and then they got really excited that there was a founder that could actually talk to them. So all of a sudden, like a couple of them, I guess, who were connected were like, hey man, like this is huge, like here are like 20 Chinese KOLs that we know, whatever. And now whenever people post in English about the project, they tag me, they tag Acme, they don't tag CERN. But apparently he's a Chinese KOL now, so that's cool, I guess.
I mean, there was
China's
an influx of like Chinese people in the Telegram.
It
and
was
then there
crazy.
other-
We have a Chinese Telegram now with 200 people in it, and it's a couple hours old, and it's like it's crazy. It's like live in there.
I just saw there was a message from this guy. I'm sure there were like several, but there was a message from this guy like, yes, exact chart like, well, I don't know, exact chart like Mubi. Mubi first go 100 million, then 300 million, and like Mubi was like huge in the Chinese community. So like as soon as I saw that, I was like, okay, it's like definitely China buying.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, we've definitely like I'll be honest, because I'm a trader as well. Like I've been involved just as a user, or like especially as like a very invested user in so many different projects, and like for a long time now I've basically just thought that like Chinese whales or China bidding or whatever was just like a meme. Like I thought it was just like grade A psyops, like doesn't exist. It's just like, yeah, we got AVAX trending, the Chinese whales, and it's just bullshit. But I guess they're real. I don't know. I mean, like if I go on the notifications on the Pandora account, it's like literally all Chinese. So yeah, it's actually pretty crazy. It's like every other post is in Chinese, and then like we kind of just backlog the important ones for CERN to reply to, and his job now is just speaking Chinese. But yeah, it's been cool. We have a few Chinese mods we've onboarded. We already basically have like a Chinese team. We've got the guy who set up the Discord, who's amazing. He did the Ether Discord as well. He threw that up crazy fast. Oh, actually, it's already here. He's built out a Chinese section of the Discord. He just DM'd me. He said it's pretty much good. So yeah, we're expanding there. And then we've had all kinds of interest from other communities too. So it's been super cool.
Man, one of the thing that I wanted to say was it's not often that you have something that's like new in crypto. And I always like to jump on these narratives super quick. The last one, like I also did ordinals, and that went amazing. But the last one before that was Frentech, and it's just so refreshing to see you. It's like, dude, like I'm in a group chat with like 25 other like top Frentech people who like went super deep on Frentech, and like the level of cope and frustration we have because like that app didn't change at all in like 6 months, or like like marginal improvements and stuff. And the founder never communicated, and on top of that, like excoriated his community or anyone who questioned him. The difference, like you guys have been live for like 3 days. You're like always on. Like when you're not sleeping, you're like, oh, I don't even want to imagine what your DMs are like. And you're always like at least like reacting to messages and stuff. You're always in the Telegram group. On top of that, you're like doing all these calls and shit. Like I don't know how you have time for all of that. And yeah, just like the fact that you guys are building so fast and iterating so fast and already onboarding devs and stuff after like 3 days is mind blowing. And it's just so frustrating that something like Frentech, which could have been something so great, hasn't hired people still, even though they needed devs. And you guys are already like, yeah, we hired these devs, these guys doing the Discord, community mods, fourth founder, whatever. So yeah, it's like the thing that prompted me to say this was the fact that you said that loads of people are reaching out to you not because of grift, but because of excitement. It's kind of like a similar situation, right? Like whenever something new like this, we're all geeks. Whenever something new pops up, we kind of like, that's what spurred my curiosity as well. I was like, oh, this is really cool. Like, I spent literally 3 hours on Saturday just like sending NFTs from one wallet to the other, stashing away my reds and stuff. Like, my girlfriend was like, oh, what are you doing? Are you crazy? And I was like, yeah. I'm like, she was asking me to do it for her as well, because I was like, I had all the rhythm and like everything nailed process wise. But yeah, you get excited about this, but then if it's also matched by a team that's competent and that can deliver super fast, it makes even more, like it gives even more satisfaction that you're part of something that's actually different and novel. you know. So I guess that's part of the reason why like the energy and everything that you're seeing is like actually legit, right? So
Yeah,
I
I mean,
hope this goes really well.
I appreciate it, man. Like when Friendtech launched, like I think that was one of the first things I did was I hit up Racer. And you know, I know most like I know a lot of people on CT, and like generally the mutuals are decent enough that even back when my account was a lot smaller, like, you know, I'd hit up devs, I'd hit up big project founders, whatever, and like eventually I'd get some kind of reply. Uh, but yeah, I sent a lot of feedback. I sent a lot of interest in being willing to help. Never really got anything there. And then my feedback was kind of the same. I was like, oh, this is, you know, like this could be innovating a lot more than it really is. I was never really a massive fan of Frontech, to be completely honest. But yeah, I mean, like this is kind of how I got my start. Like, was a lot of cold DMing, like a lot of like, hey, trust me, I'm not wasting your time, and I have a million DMs. So I try to be cognizant of that, basically. Like, you know, whether it's as a founder or, you know, now that like, you know, not trying to let like 10K followers get to my head. Like just trying to reply to everything I know like generally is worth it, because usually you waste 2 hours, 3 hours, it's a total waste, and then one thing pops up that you would have missed, and it's like, you know, you get all that value back and then 5 times it, right? Like there are a lot of people who I would have not known about if I wasn't literally reading every single thing, that are now already like massive contributions, massive value adds. So yeah, we're doing our best.
All right. Well, that was a lot more alpha pack than I first anticipated. So thanks, Dragos and Control, for jumping on with me and Jerry. That was great. I'm just really excited to see where this goes, and I think it's one of those kind of shifts in the industry. I think that's just taking place at this point in time, which is why I think everyone's so excited about it. And we'll try and pull something together in article format, make it really simple for all the apes out there that are still trying to wrap their head around it. And we'll try and get that out this week. But yeah, thanks so much for jumping on, everyone. And yeah, if you ever want to come back on, just give us a shout, open invite, and we'll do it again.
Happy to, man. I really appreciate it. Glad I chimed in. This was a great conversation. And yeah,
All right.
Thanks a lot, guys. Excited.
All right, take it easy, everyone.
Like and subscribe, you filthy apes. Like and subscribe.
Yeah, please like and subscribe. All right. Back to work.
All right, take it easy. Bye.
Ciao.